Okay, everyone, let's get started. Welcome to NSNA's Virtual Treasurer Certificate Program. My name is Stacie Kinsey. I'm your 2020-2021 Secretary Treasurer. Here with me is Dr. Diane Mancino, Executive Director of NSNA, Dev Persaud, NSNA Director of Finance and Administration, and Jasmine Melendez, NSNA Project Manager and our wonderful moderator. I'd like to take a quick Zoom poll, and I'll launch that now. Okay. I'd like to know how many of you attended or watched the virtual leadership use session over the summer. And it's okay to be honest, the poll is anonymous. If you did, some of this material may sound familiar to you, but that just means you have a foundation. We zoomed so fast through it, and today we'll be able to dig more in depth in this program than we had time to during the summer leadership use session. Okay, it looks like about half of you have answered. It looks like a majority of you guys are saying no, that you didn't watch it, and that's okay because we're going to go into depth and we will get everyone caught up on how to be the greatest treasurer for your organization. Okay, just a high-level overview of what we will be discussing today. We have the vital checklist, we have the treasurer's handbook acclamation, fiduciary responsibility. We'll talk about budgets, financial reports, and internal controls. We'll have a quiz, and then we'll review the quiz. Don't worry, we'll have 5-minute breaks to stretch and refresh. And I also want to note that sometimes when we discuss finances, certain terms can be unfamiliar. Please make note of them, and we'll answer questions periodically throughout the program before the breaks. If you have a question, please submit it through the chat box throughout the presentation. And I believe you all were sent a link in the Dropbox and in the chat that contains the files for the vital checklist, the treasurer's handbook, and the Excel report spreadsheet. I do recommend downloading these and having it handy while we proceed through the program. I'll be referring to different sections, and visuals are really helpful. We will bounce around a bit through the treasurer's handbook, but you'll see why when we get there. So let's jump right in. When taking on the role of the treasurer, you may be overwhelmed by the number of things you need to know about your chapter or association in order to be a successful treasurer or board member. NSNA has prepared a checklist of most every question you'll need to answer for your association in order to ensure a smooth transition and well-running organization. It basically takes the pulse of your organization's finances. It asks questions such as the location of vital documents, constituency status, are your financial reports attached to minutes? Do you have board meetings on a regular basis? Things like that. It can give you a good jumping off point to ensure the health of your organization. The next document you'll need is the most important document in my opinion, the Treasurer's Handbook. It contains just about everything you need in order to learn to be a successful treasurer for your chapter or state. It has a wealth of information that will help you navigate keeping your finances and books in order. We have here a quick look at the contents page where you'll see various tools available. We will begin with what exactly does a treasurer do? Treasurers have many responsibilities that are the life force of your chapter. As custodian of funds, you are in charge of the organization's funds. You are the person the other board members look to for input on financial decisions. And your input matters a lot because you see the whole financial picture. You will usually head the finance committee that's responsible for bringing new financial guidance before the entire organization and its members. As the treasurer, you are the organization's visionary financial expert, much in the same way the president is the visionary leader for the organization. Your guidance will help the committees share the organization's funds fairly as based upon the goals set by the board. You also help ensure the organization's funds don't get bogged down in any specific area. So how do you do it? The budget. The budget serves as the blueprint for how the organization's yearly goals and activities will be funded. You can't have the fun events that your members look forward to without properly budgeting for it. Sound records are the key to any financial success and protecting your organization long-term. As you eventually transition out of your position, your successor will need access to all historical documents. I can almost guarantee that they will be very grateful to have clean, well-organized records. At the end of each fiscal year, it's prudent to have a certified public accountant review all accounts to ensure you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. You will also be responsible for ensuring all federal, state, and local tax returns are filed on time. We'll go more into depth a little later on this part. Fundraising is one source of your future funds. You may either head up a fundraising committee or help guide a special committee to meet both the finance and executive board's goals. Other sources of revenue fall under your umbrella as well. You will also ensure that all formal policies and procedures are documented to protect yourself and your organization. It's important to remember that these are just a few of the roles. Depending on your chapter's size and resources, you may be asked to serve in additional ways. Some chapters may be smaller and don't have the need to do some of these duties. Remember to check your association's bylaws to ensure you're fulfilling all of your duties. There are a number of different tools treasurers use to ensure that they are accounting for all the dollars and cents wisely in accordance with the rules and regulations. To get acclimated with your handbook and quickly touch on some important concepts, we'll talk quickly about some here. Your handbook on pages 9 through 11 talk about budgets, reserve funds, and financial reports. There are some samples in there, and we will go into depth about these a little later. In your handbook on pages 12 through 16, we have more tools for you. Again, we'll talk about these later in the program, but for right now, I just wanted you to begin to get familiar with some of the vocab of these tools. So we have quarterly reports. They are made listing out all of the bank accounts, cash box balances, and other sources of where your money are being held. Accounting templates to track all of your accounting needs. You'll need a place to record everything. Luckily, in this modern era, we're blessed to have software to help us instead of the handwritten ledgers that we used to look at. Spreadsheets are especially useful to keep everything clean and uniform, as well as to quickly calculate the data of your formula using formulas. You can use accounting software like QuickBooks if you have access to it, but even simple spreadsheet software such as Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets can assist you to just ensure that you have proper formulas in there. Personally, my association uses Google Sheets, so we can easily share the most up-to-date information between ourselves and our faculty. Expense reimbursement forms are very important to ensure checks and balances. We'll discuss this further, but the main thing here is to cover yourself and your board from liability. This ensures approvals are received and receipts are given for expenditures. Checkbooks and bank reconciliation, deposit records, audits. Now, I know this word comes with a lot of negativity, but they're actually very necessary and a beneficial tool. It provides assurance that the finances of your organization are being handled properly and can help you avoid legal situations. Income tax returns, donation and contribution records, membership due records, investment guidelines, and securing important documents. In the Treasurer's Handbook on page 17, the next tool is the Finance Committee Agenda. I won't go too into depth about this since it's the Treasurer's program, but as the Finance Committee Chair, you should have a basic working knowledge of how to run a committee meeting. It's similar to a board meeting where there should be an agenda and minutes. This is a sample agenda for a Finance Committee meeting. In many organizations, the Finance Committee is the same as the Executive Committee. Typically, it's the President, the Vice President, and the Secretary and Treasurer, but refer to your association's bylaws for clarity. Minutes should always be kept of your Finance Committee meetings. These minutes should be distributed at your next Finance Committee meeting and board meeting. In addition, when reporting to your board, you should attach a copy of the finance report and Finance Committee minutes to the board minutes. Continuing to page 17, you have a more detailed explanation of the additional financial reports, including income tax filing, incorporation, tax exemption, and the employer identification numbers, all of which will go further into detail when we talk about financial reports. Fiduciary responsibility, a big phrase for a big job. A fiduciary is an individual, corporation, or association holding assets for another party, often with the legal authority and duty to make decisions regarding the financial and business matters on behalf of the other party. The entire board of directors legally has the fiduciary responsibility for the financial assets of the association or chapter and are bound ethically to act in its best interests. It's important to note that NSNA does not have any fiduciary responsibility to state associations and chapters. NSNA is legally separate from these entities and does not actively manage their assets nor make business decisions for these entities. Also, associations and chapters are not tax exempt under NSNA's tax exempt status. However, NSNA does maintain an advisory relationship to help guide you and have a financially successful chapter or organization. One may ask, what are the fiduciary responsibilities of the consultants and advisors that are used by the organization? Typically, they're not fiduciaries. Consultants and advisors should not be making financial decisions. However, if the chapter's bylaws stipulate it, or if the board allows them to make financial decisions, then they are fiduciaries. Consultants and advisors should only guide the decision-making process. Their role is to use their expertise to help the board look ahead and ask questions, weighing pros and cons that should prevent unintended consequences of financial decisions. How does the board carry out its fiduciary responsibility? Well, with due diligence. Due diligence is the process of evaluating details before making a business decision. Using budgets, financial reports, and ensuring control procedures are in place to protect the board. You'll also need to ensure that there is no conflict of interest. Get 3 bids for any significant capital expenditure and make decisions based primarily on evidence and not how it benefits a single person. We're back. So we'll continue. To satisfy your fiduciary responsibility, boards must use, at a minimum, 3 financial tools: budgets, financial reports, and internal controls. We will first look at budgets. An operating budget is ultimately the plan for the operations of an organization for a period of time. Many decisions are involved and many questions must be answered. Old plans and processes are questioned, as well as new plans and processes. The board decides the most effective ways to perform each task. They ask whether a particular activity should still be performed, and if so, how. They ask what resources are available and what additional resources will be needed. Once a budget is finalized, it becomes the plan for the operations of the organization. Board members have the authority to spend within the budget and the responsibility to achieve revenues specified within the budget. Budgets, actual revenues, and expenditures are monitored constantly for variations and to determine whether the organization is on target. If performance does not meet with the budget, action can be taken immediately to adjust activities. Without constant monitoring, the organization does not realize it's missing their targeted goals until it's too late to make adjustments. One way to evaluate is to compare the budget with actual performance. Did we reach the target revenue within the constraints of the targeted expenditures? You will use the concepts and apply them to your organization, ensuring that you do not overcommit your organization's dollars and ensuring committees do not spend more than their budgeted share. The first principle to utilizing budgets. We'll review a sample budget after reviewing these steps. In order to create a balanced budget, you'll want to review the budget and expenses from prior years. Next, collect input from all board members regarding the cost of ongoing programs or new programs. You'll list sources of income, such as dues, advertising, exhibits, fundraisers, donations, etc. Now, plan how this income will be spent. Will you use it for convention, newsletter creation, meeting expenses, charitable activities. Create a balanced budget. Ideally, the budgeted income should be equal to budgeted expenses, creating a $0 budget. Avoid drafting a budget where your expenses are greater than your income. Instead, cut expenditures to match your expected income. On the flip side, overages should be added to your reserve fund. Note, only boards can approve operating budgets, not the House of Delegates or voting body, because only the board has the fiduciary responsibility, not the House of Delegates or general membership. Page 10 of the Treasurer's Handbook has a sample balanced budget. Here we have an example of a balanced budget where the estimated revenues or monies coming in are listed at the top and the estimated expenses are listed at the bottom. The total revenues are $18,000 and the total expenses are $18,000, which makes this a balanced budget. Before the start of the fiscal year, the board would have a special budget meeting outlaying their plans for the coming year, translated into dollars. Expenses for each line item is estimated and revenue plans are formulated on how to pay for the total planned budgeted expense. Next, we'll tackle financial reports. The next financial tool to satisfy your fiduciary responsibility is to compile financial reports. In order to determine if your budgetary plan is working and to produce information that's useful to the board and its members, it's necessary to produce financial reports. You should draft a report that compares your actual income and expense to your budgeted income and expense. The purpose of financial reports is to document how well your association is achieving its financial plan. Your financial report should be included in your minutes, typically as an attachment at the end. So what exactly are they and why are they important? Financial reports summarize key information about the financial health, success, and profitability of the entity. The financial figures in a financial statement also provide a measure of success or failure of its current management and business strategies. It provides a historical record for performance for future boards, and in many situations, it is a legal and auditing requirement. I want to note that it is the fiduciary responsibility of the board of directors to receive financial reports at all regular board meetings, and that membership receives a financial report at the annual meeting of membership. As mentioned before, the financial reports are the life force of the treasurer's toolkit. It measures the pulse of the organization. Types of financial reports include the latest revenue and expense statement, bank account balances like checking and savings, CDs, investments. Investment reports include earnings and dividends or losses. This is less common and are not routinely used at a local level. Depending on the fiscal year, the treasurer prepares a proposed annual operating budget for the board approval. Review of annual auditor's reports, which are reviewed once during the board's tenure. Review of the investment guidelines, which are reviewed once during the board's tenure as well. Note that the investment guidelines may be revised by the board. Next, we'll look at some of the financial reports. Page 11 of the Treasurer's Handbook has this sample revenues and expense report shown on the left. It reports the actual monies coming in and monies going out for the period, usually from the beginning of the fiscal period to date. It looks a lot like the budget template we discussed earlier, but these are the actual figures. Now, I like to have a separate column next to the actual that has the budget numbers, so you can easily compare how well it's being managed. To the right, we have the quarterly report. It's a snapshot of your current assets, where they're located, and it's especially useful as a quick reference. A tool you can use to help prepare your financial report is this monthly finance report prepared by NSNA and was included in the Dropbox. It can be populated from information from your monthly bank statement and your credit or debit card statements if your organization uses those. Note that the far right columns are the budgeted number for each line item, and a budget variance formula is in there so that you can see how you're doing in comparison to the budget number as the fiscal year progresses. Pages 13 and 14 of the handbook talk about expense vouchers. Now, this is one of the most important tools for checks and balances. If you're unfamiliar with that term, we'll talk about it more in the internal controls section. Having a specific form ensures that you are receiving all of the necessary information needed in order to get the person reimbursed while still maintaining your books. Also, having a written set of guidelines ensures that the rules are agreed upon with the board and leaves nothing open to interpretation. Your financial books are not the place to have anything left open to interpretation. You can copy and paste this example from the expense voucher and use it for all of your approved expenses. Note that expenses must be approved by the board and included in the minutes. So now I do have a scheduled 5-minute break, but I wanted to check and see if we have any questions in the chat box so far. Dev and Jasmine, do we have any questions?
There are no questions so far regarding the contents.
Okay, so we're going kind of fast through the material, so I'm thinking we might skip the break and just move on to internal controls. Okay, so we'll skip that and we will move right on. So to satisfy fiduciary responsibility, we're going to look at the internal controls section. These are the procedures to put into place to protect you, your board, and your organization. So they're pretty important and they are there for a reason. There's a lot, so bear with me. When it comes to internal controls, it's important to know who's responsible for what. The board of directors is responsible for determining and approving the policies and procedures for the organization's finances. The treasurer is responsible for ensuring that the board's policies are carried out. Because of the susceptibility to errors, misappropriation of funds, and other irregularities, we have rules in place here to cover the handling of the association's funds. They're called internal controls. They play an important role in any system dealing with cash and funds. You may have heard the term checks and balances. It's the same concept. This helps ensure that you cover yourself and your board from any potential accusations or mistakes, whether intentional or not. Just like you protect your license as a nurse by doing the rights of medication administration or charting, or having another nurse witness drawing up insulin dosage, you want to protect your board by keeping policies in place to ensure the proper handling of funds. These internal controls ensure the funds are properly accounted for. You must have a board-approved policy and procedure manual in place to guide the board on how to safeguard your financial assets and to comply with state and local laws. You and your board can be held legally liable for any misappropriation of funds, or if funds go missing because they were misaccounted for. The first recommendation we have is to have a solid checklist, including important dates. Many times, as a board transitions, the new board can forget to file their annual 990 tax forms. If you fail to file for 3 consecutive years, you'll lose your tax-exempt status. At board meetings, all board members should review the financial report, bank statements, and credit card statements for unusual transactions. This is very important for checks and balances, and having many eyes check over your work helps protect you as the treasurer from potential legal actions if funds are misused. It is one of the most important tasks as a treasurer. If credit cards are established, statements should be inspected monthly by the treasurer, the president, and the secretary for unusual transactions, which must be backed by receipts. Authorize the credit card company to send monthly statements to the treasurer, the secretary, and the president. The more oversight, the better. We strongly urge you not to use debit cards as the accessibility to cash is too easy and may create tracing issues. A fidelity bond is an insurance policy that protects the organization from fraudulent acts by individuals. Contracts. Boards are entrusted with the legal responsibility for decision-making relating to contracts. It should be reviewed by legal counsel. Deposits are made on a timely basis. Detailed records which support deposits must be kept in the form of deposit slips and/or copies of the checks. Investment policy. For large associations with invested funds, have an investment policy in place to make sure that you engage a professional manager to manage those funds. Reserve funds. Now, we talked about these on the budget slide. Not-for-profit doesn't mean that there cannot be an excess of funds or a profit at the end of the year. Typically, these profits can be accumulated into a reserve fund to fund future projects to keep that zero balance budget. You'll maintain accurate minutes. These are legal documents. Ensure that those present or absent are correctly listed. If there's a quorum present, that they reflect what happened at the meeting, including motions and actions. Also note the outcome of the votes. Also note the outcome of votes is recorded in the minutes and not how each person voted, just the outcome. Conflict of interest. Don't make decisions out of self-interest or in the interest of only part of the association, instead of the common good of the entire organization. Diving into more depth, some of these may have been mentioned before, but I'm going to say them again because they're just that important. Internal controls are listed on page 5 and 6. It says they're for states, but I think that chapters can benefit from these procedures as well. Establish and maintain bank and other financial institution accounts in the name of the association. Strictly prohibit establishing accounts in the name of the officers or other members of the association. Select a bank that has branches in major cities in your state so that only the branch and not the whole bank needs to be changed if necessary. When there is a change of officers, it's the duty of the new secretary to file a corporate authorization resolution signed by the secretary, the treasurer, and the president. File a new signature card with your current financial institution. These procedures will invalidate the previous authorized signature and make effective the current authorized ones. In smaller chapters, you may be the secretary and need to file these on behalf of the organization. There should be at least 2 authorized signers on bank accounts. The president, the treasurer, and a state consultant or faculty member is recommended. Requiring 2 signatures and having 3 authorized signers helps expedite payments. Use an endorsement stamp to ensure the checks are deposited into the proper accounts and not cashed. Again, we strongly urge you not to use debit cards as the accessibility to cash is too easy and will create tracing issues. The board should establish policies that require and file all expense receipts and signed vouchers that approve the expense. This should be reflected as motions in the minute of the board of directors meetings. Deposits are made on a timely basis. Detailed records which support deposits must be kept, like deposit slips and copies of checks. These records should show the source of payment, the amount, the check number, the date deposited, invoice number, and any other pertinent information. Ideally, a copy of the check should also be made and retained in those files. Cash, checks, and check receipts are kept in a secure place and locked up prior to making the deposit. Funds collected at convention meetings and fundraising activities must be counted with 2 people present. Both individuals should sign off on the report of the receipt. All checks dispersed must have dual signatures, and all checks are signed manually promptly after the check has been written. Bank statements should be carefully inspected monthly by the president and treasurer at least to ensure accuracy and that the transactions were approved by the board. Attach or include in all board minutes a treasurer's report, including bank balances, annual operating budget with the current revenues and expenses, the income statement, etc. These minutes and attachments must be properly filed with the state association and sent to the National Student Nurse Association. Okay, we made it. Let's pause here and answer any questions that you may have had, and then we'll take a 5-minute break. Jasmine and Deb, do we have any questions yet?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
When a state nursing organization is aligned with a professional association, where is the line? The professional organization is a gating function to our bank account, that is username and password to the bank account.
I don't fully understand the question of the line.
Deanna Martin, can you please unmute yourself and just please clarify your question.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Deanna Martin, Washington State Treasurer. We have a professional organization that is aligned with our NSNA, so we're NSWS, Nursing Students Washington State. And our professional organization, so the Washington State Nursing Association, has allocated resources to us. However, it's unfortunate that they're the ones that have that access to our bank account and username and password. So having that internal control of, a signature card, there was just recently a request to have a credit card created so that, because of COVID times, so they don't have to use a check. They're also our check governing body. So it's like we're limited as board members to a meeting to have access to that. So it sounds like there should be some control for us as the actual students and the members that should be able to have access to that information. Is that correct? Where's the line? That's kind of like, where's the line?
So what I'm hearing is they help fund your organization. Is that correct?
They do not help fund us at all. I mean, they help fund they don't help fund us by giving us money for our treasury. No.
Okay.
They help fund us by every 2 years accommodating us space for our annual convention.
Okay. What it sounds like to me is that they shouldn't have access to that bank account. It sounds like you should have that bank account yourself and that they should write you a check for that accommodation. Dev, do you have any?
Yes, I would recommend right away that the state association or the chapter in question here should refer to their bylaws. If that relationship has been cemented in their bylaws, let them refer to that or their internal policies. If changes are necessary, if the current board needs to change that, they would need a professional amendment to their bylaws as necessary. That's all the guidance we can give on this matter. The first thing they should do is to check their bylaws as it pertains to this relationship.
Okay, great. Yeah, we were asked to sign a letter so that our professional person could get a credit card for us on this behalf of this COVID times. However, I just feel like that my gut is telling me that shouldn't be the case, and we should be able to manage it and manage the finances. Additionally, that we should not be signing over our authority to another person. So
yes,
okay,
this is exactly, this is the board decision. It's a very important decision, especially in this new era of COVID-19. It's a pressing issue that the entire board and consultant should come together and discuss ways of reviewing that relationship, especially its financial element, and move forward from there.
Thank you very much. My gut is telling me that I'm checking out the right thing, so thank you very much.
Absolutely, yes. Have the input of the entire board and the consultants.
Great.
I have a
Stacie-
quick question.
Stacie-
If you have a second. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, thank you. So we are a fairly new ANS organization that I'm representing the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, the Association of Nursing Students. And we started maybe about 2-3 years ago. And just this year, we just submitted our first IRS EID number form to get us recognized by them, as well as I literally just sent our DBA form to get us recognized by the county, just so we can get a bank account started. Our bylaws do not indicate any direction of which we should be taking, though, due to us being such a new organization. So what would you say our next step should be as a ANS organization after this bank account is finally started, after everything is settled in that aspect? Because we were literally working with cash, just using that as our ANS dues, and just trying to circulate and having one-on-one communication with the president.
Okay, so if there's no guidelines in your bylaws, then as a board, you would need to come together and decide which way you wanted to go.
Yes,
From
that
there,
was what I would be recommending.
From there, you would recommend changes to your bylaws. That way, everything is in writing, and it really serves as that pathway. Deb, do you agree?
Absolutely, yes. Sorry to be harping back to the bylaws and your policy and procedures manual. If you don't have those, that's the first thing you should be doing, reviewing your bylaws to suit your current needs, and make sure that you have policies and procedures in place, as Stacie is just listing. If you need guidance on those, we could help you there also. You could email me, nsna@nsna.org to give you further guidance. We can't tell you what to do. We can just offer, scenarios how you can move forward with that.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Stacie, we do have a question from Macy Bryce. She asks if we have resources on how to set up a bank account for our chapter, as we are beginning the process of starting a bank account and becoming incorporated right now.
If you look at the chat, I had answered that question basically. So we've been getting a lot of these questions, and I do have a set of resources, suggestions based on particular situation of the chapter. So one set of facts, one set of suggestions will not suit that particular situation. So what I'm suggesting, you guys could email me at nsna@nsna.org. We can discuss that, and I'll provide you with guidance on how to go ahead with that based on your current situation. As I mentioned, we have received many of these, and I usually respond right away as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I didn't really necessarily have a question that I put into the chat. We have a small organization as well, and I kind of just want to make sure that we're on the same track as far as sending an email if I needed to, just to make sure I have everything clarified. We have a small chapter. It's less than 50 members. To make sure that we set the groundwork appropriately and correctly for the next transitioning year, because most of the board of directors were all seniors. And so the way that our school does things is that you have to go through the student government, and once the student government approves the organization, then the school holds the funds. Is it appropriate to assume that we could call the school holding the funds the bank or financial institution, or does it need to be a separate entity?
Your situation is a little different. I know my school's organization does it that way, where our school was our bank. They were holding our funds. And then we still use the same internal controls, such as the revenue reports. We also used the reimbursement forms and things like that. But yes, if your school is set up that way, it can be considered the bank.
Okay, like this is really like the first year that our organization has had any resources. Like we just did our first fundraiser, we just accrued money, we haven't had it before. Like I said, we're trying to make sure we set the foundation and the groundwork appropriately. And so we're trying to go from here and make sure that that's appropriate. So if that's already been done, it's correct to assume that it is a safe path to go about. Is that correct?
It sounds like it is. It sounds like you guys are actually on a really good, trajectory. And do you have your bylaws?
We have our bylaws set up. We have all 5 of the positions currently filled, and so we have the meeting to go ahead and get recognized by our student government as an official organization that will get recognized by the school and all set up for next week. And so after that, that's kind of what sets us to go ahead and do everything. As of right now, the funds are kind of in limbo. We do have everything documented, but because of the way the school runs things, we're on hold as far as what we can do with our finances. We have everything recorded as far as we haven't had a need to record any debt or anything that's been used, because we've been, putting everything out so that everything gets done. We're not having anything that's been taken out yet. The money that's been set aside, we're going to go ahead and just save to go from there. But I just wanted to make sure that that's the best way for us to go about to have everything recorded. NSNA doesn't really NSNA doesn't really put anything in the treasurer handbook as far as the school holding funds. And so I just wanted to make sure that that's the correct way and the safest way to get our organization set up.
Yeah, if your school is willing to do that, I would say yes. I would say keep your records, keep your own personal records. I know the school will keep records too, but keep your own personal. That way you can use the school's report as your bank reconciliation statement. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. And like I said, we've got good documentation. Because I guess we're so new, we're trying to make sure that everybody is involved, and so everyone has a copy of everything that's been going on, just because we're trying to make sure that it's the safest way. But I appreciate that. Thank y'all for clarifying that.
Yeah, I think you're doing a good job keeping your organization and getting it up and running. It's tough to do. It's tough to start up a brand new chapter, but it sounds like you're doing it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We are a small organization. We're in Demorest, Georgia at Piedmont College. So it's really new and we're really excited. We're just trying to make sure we mind our P's and Q's and cross our T's, dot our I's.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
It sounds like you're doing a pretty good job there in terms of documentation. And my only comment would be, beyond what you're saying, is to have a very good relationship with the Student Affairs Division of your administrative office. Speak to them, talk to them constantly in case you have any questions. So you have that rapport with them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Stacie, we have another question from Alyssa Tizarina. I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. How would you recommend managing 3 separate bank accounts, a school account, a merchant processing account through Square, and Chase?
Okay. I'm going to defer this one to Dev, since he has more knowledge on pulling everything together.
Okay, it's just my quick response would be your internal control procedures times 3. Meaning that you make sure that you're getting all your statements, and I would recommend the entire board to be reviewing all these bank statements independently to make sure that your income is being recorded, your expenses are being are being approved correctly. So the checks and balances and the internal controls that Stacie is laying out here would be very relevant for you for each and every one of these accounts that you're mentioning. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And in terms of getting it all into one place, I think Stacie mentioned when she mentioned that spreadsheet that NSNA created for each income, you could add all three of these reports, add the figures for all three of these reports into one report. And if you contact me, I could, if you need help beyond that point, I would be willing to help you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
The dilemma at hand that our school chapter, I'm the treasurer from University of Texas at Arlington, and I'm newly appointed into this position. But something that I had come across was we were being awarded certain grants, funds, scholarships through the school, and it was being issued to our school account, but then having to move the funds into our business account through Chase, and then having additional funds and reports being issued through our Square account. So it was just a lot to manage, and I was just kind of curious as to how I should go about making sure that everything is squared away properly.
Okay. Yes, it does sound confusing. If you could get back to us, we'll have some more guidance for you. But we're sort of unclear what's going on also.
Yep, and you can also use the revenue and expenses, the revenue expense sheet, to list all of those. That way you have it all in one area to then really look at your revenues, if that makes sense. Okay, was there any other questions? Jasmine?
No, no more questions at this time.
Okay, let's take a quick 5-minute break, and we will return at 5 after, okay? Okay, I think we're back. All right. So we've got a few more things to go over, and then it will be time for the quiz. So, when it comes to tax forms, those with annual gross receipts of less than $50,000 or less, especially those with tax exempt status, may be required to electronically submit a 990N, also known as the e-postcard, which is a basic questionnaire with 8 questions. There really is no excuse for not submitting it in a timely fashion, and it's extremely important. Even if you're uncertain of your status, you should file this anyway and file any response you receive from the IRS. NSNA will require a copy of the 990 from state associations beginning April 2nd, 2021. Incorporation. Now, essentially, incorporation of the association in your particular state provides limited liability protection for individual board members for past due expense payments, or if the association is unable to pay its bills. Vendors can only pursue payments to the incorporated entity and not employees or board members. However, if unincorporated, the vendor can pursue payment from the board members and the signer of the check. Although there are fees involved, it's relatively easy to get your SNA incorporated at the state level. Tax exemption. The Treasurer's Handbook, pages 18 and 19, talks about tax exemption. A status of 501c3 designates the organization as a charitable organization. The status of 501c6 is defined by the IRS as primarily supported by membership dues and other income from activities substantially related to its tax-exempt purpose. Formal recognition of tax exemption from federal income tax is in your handbook, as well as an exemption notice. Employer identification numbers. Your association must have an employer identification number to open a bank account or file tax returns. School chapters with a bank account in the name of the chapter should also have an EIN. Make sure you have this as part of your vital paperwork. To apply for an EIN, you can apply online or call the number shown. Okay, in summary, the three biggest components for success as a fiduciary of your association or chapter's funds are the use of budgets, financial reports, and internal controls to ensure proper use of funds. I have listed here some additional resources to help you in your journey of becoming competent treasurers for your organizations. This information will be helpful to you not only for your current roles as treasurers, but in the future as nurse leaders. Understanding concepts like budgeting and the importance of checks and balances or internal controls is important. Please, let's pause here for any final questions before we get into quiz time. Jasmine and Deb, do we have any questions in the chat box?
No, at this time.
No others now.
No? Okay. So we'll move right into the quiz. In the chat box, Jasmine will add the link to the quiz, which we'll do over SurveyMonkey. Please make sure you fill out your name and email on the quiz as the exact way we will have it on your certificate. We will all pause here so you can complete your test and then return in 35 minutes. We'll say,
Stacie, we do have one question in the chat. We do have one question in the chat. Can you clarify when the 990 is due?
Dev?
You can go back to that slide. Basically, what I would advise to make it easier to understand is the 15th day of the 5th month of the end of your fiscal period. Now, let's say your fiscal period, for simplicity, is December 31st. So the 5th month after that would be May. So the 990 would be due May the 15th. The 15th day of the 5th month after the end of your fiscal period. Is that clear?
So the second bullet point on this slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you have it.
So if an organization's fiscal year ends in May, then the deadline would be October 15th.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. There you go.
perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll go back to the quiz slide so you guys can get the information. Okay, so make sure you fill out your name and email on the quiz exactly the way you want it to appear on your certificate. So we'll pause here so you can complete the quiz, and we'll return, we'll say 1/4 till. I will mute my microphone so I won't have music playing. That way you guys can concentrate on your quiz. And then we'll go over the quiz and see how you did. So good luck.
Stacie, one more question. Sorry. Is it possible for them to take the quiz at a later time? They have class during this time, so they wanted to make sure that they could do that.
I guess so. Once they submit it, yes. I would say yes.
Yeah, since we'll be reviewing this.
Okay, so
Sorry.
I am putting the information about the quiz in the chat, but that link will also be provided if you're not taking the quiz at this time. That'll be provided on the website as well. So next week.
Okay. So we will return here at 1/4 till, and good luck.
Sorry, everyone. That was not the link. Hold on. It is coming. It should say SurveyMonkey. That is your link. And everyone, if there are any questions, please put them in the chat during the time that the test is being administered.
Okay, everyone. All right, let's review. Welcome back. I just know you guys did really great. So let's review the quiz. I'll read the questions and give the answer. And if you have any questions over it, please add it to the chat box. Okay, let's head to it. So the first one is, at the end of the fiscal year, a nonprofit organization is not permitted to have a profit. That is false. Number 2, the fiduciary responsibility of the board of directors includes the selection of stocks for investing the association's funds. That is also false. Number 3, a treasurer who misdirects the association's funds can be arrested. That, in fact, is true. Number 4, only organizations that take in $25,000 in annual revenues are required to file the IRS 990 tax return. False. Number 5, the role of the treasurer includes financial reporting at every regular board meeting. That is true. Number 6, it's recommended by NSNA that at least 2 signatures be required for check signing. That is also true. Number 7, debit cards are an excellent way to pay for association expenses. False. Number 8, to avoid board conflicts, bank statements should only be inspected by the treasurer who prepares the bank reconciliation. That is also false. Number 9, only the board of directors may authorize expenditures. True. Number 10, NSNA recommends that credit card statements be sent to at least one other board member in addition to the treasurer. True. Number 11, the House of Delegates or the association's voting body is responsible for approving the annual operating budget. That is false. Only the board. Is there a question that just came through? No, okay. Number 12, a secure way of receiving state dues reimbursement is through automatic clearinghouse transfers. That is true. Number 13, bank accounts must only be in the name of the organization. True. Number 14, following the annual election of the state board, NSNA requires the submission of an updated state board roster. True. Number 15, expense vouchers are outdated and not necessary. Very false. Number 16, it's recommended that an association's reserve fund be maintained at the following level. The answer was D, 50% of the annual operating budget. Number 17, which of the following definitions describes fidelity bonds? The answer is B, form of protection that covers policyholders for losses that occur from fraudulent acts by employees or board members who are actively handling the assets of an association. Number 18, what are internal controls? The answer is E, C, and D, which are board policies governing proper custody and safekeeping of associations' funds, and methods to ensure the safe handling of association resources. Number 19, for official NSNA constituency status, the following must be submitted to NSNA. The answer was D, all of the above. Those answers are A, approved and signed state minutes for the previous year, B, signed constituency application, and C, state bylaws. Number 20, the 3 methods to review financial statements are, the answer was E, A, B, and D. Those are the annual review, the annual audit, and annual compilation. Number 21, common association income tax IRS forms include A, Form 990, B, Form 990EZ, C, Form 990N, and D, Form 990T, and it was all of the above. Number 22. What is the best method of ensuring future board members will have access to your association's important documents? The answer is C, send a copy of all documents to NSNA for preservation. Number 23. All associations must have the following. The answer is A, an EIN number, the employer identification number. Number 24, incorporation is important for which of the following reasons? The answer is B, to prevent individual board members from liability related to expenses approved by the board. Number 25, which of the following statements best describes what you're feeling at this time? Now, I really hope everyone got this one right. I hope it's B. I feel much more confident that I will carry out my role in the best interest of the association. Okay.
Stacie, we do have some questions in the chat. Can you go back to number 10, please?
Sure. Number 10, NSNA recommends that credit card statements be sent to at least one other board member in addition to the treasurer.
So in light of what they're asking, the person is asking the interpretation of be sent. Is it be reviewed or is it actually physically sent? If that is my correct interpretation. And Deanna Martin, please unmute yourself if I'm not interpreting that correctly.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Because if it's only reviewed online, then it's be reviewed versus be sent. So that's the only reason why I was like, interesting. Okay.
Yes, and I will jump in on that. These questions were, I'm glad you picked up on that, were formulated many years ago before the internet. So be sent, we were thinking of it being mailed to different parties, but nowadays, obviously, the world has changed and these things are being reviewed online. So obviously, they're both interchangeable and they should be reviewed by, and I would say to the entire board should be reviewing these documents, these statements, so to protect everyone, not just the secretary and president, since they're so easily accessible online for everyone to review.
Right. I selected false. So okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, and Deanna also did have a question regarding number 13, which what if the account is funneled through the school, which was previously discussed in the meeting?
Okay, we're talking about physical bank accounts with banks like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, the big banks. If yours is through your school, then it would just be in your association's name.
Thank you for that.
Just to add to that, you should, since you don't have, as Stacie said, the physical statements or the statements online, just be aware and make note of all the revenues that should be accounted for. And when you get a statement from the school, you kind of know from the past, okay, fine, $5,000, for example, was added this month. Where is that? Is that money accounted for? You wrote a check for $3,000, for example. Or was that subtracted? In other words, just take note on your local level, your financial activities, and then you match that with what the school, the bottom line report of what the school is doing, since you don't have the physical document. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we also have a question regarding number 18. Somebody on a cell phone, number 18. What is your question regarding number 18?
I will reread it. So what are internal controls? The options to select from were A, stress relief for treasurers who do not understand their role. That is not right. B, controls imposed by the board president to ensure that board members do what they're told to do. Nope. C, board policies governing proper custody and safekeeping of the association's funds. That is it. And D, methods to ensure safe handling of association resources. That is also true. So the answer is E, C, and D. Does that answer your question?
I believe it might, but
Okay.
yes, it does. Okay. We do have another question. The question about purpose of incorporation, there were two answers that seemed very similar. I think it was B and C, so I had to pick select all, but it was wrong. Can you review this question?
Sure. That's number 24. Incorporation is important for which of the following reasons? The options were A, individual board members are liable for contracts made in the name of the incorporated association. That is not true. Being incorporated takes the individuals kind of out of the equation. B, prevent individual board members from liability related to expenses approved by the board. That is true. C, it's only necessary in certain states. No, you would need to incorporate in your state if you're wanting to incorporate. And then D, all of the above. So the only true answer would be B.
Okay. We have a question from Sydney Branch. This may have been addressed already, but how do we go about requesting a 990 tax return document?
Okay, I believe you get it at irs.gov. I'm just double checking. It's in your
Yes.
Treasurer's Handbook.
It's gotten from the IRS website, the nonprofit section.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, we will wrap this up. That's it. Thank you all so much for being with me today to learn more about the treasurer's role in keeping an organization running. I truly hope I helped you become a more prudent financial planner and leader for your chapter. I'd like to remind you to register for the virtual mid-year conference happening October 29th through 31st. You can get more information at www.nsnamidyear.org. Lastly, you will receive your certificate for completing this program in a few days. Please keep an eye on your email. Thank you so much, everyone.